Thank you so much. I want a round of applause for the faculty and staff of this wonderful law school at Northeastern, who they worked tirelessly to bring you to where you are today, and along with your hard work, their support and your hard work has brought you now to the Juris Doctor degree, and then to a bar passage, and then on to the bar. Congratulations, counselors. It's been 31 years since I graduated from law school. A lot has happened since then, and I'm proud of you. I know that you can accept the challenges that come before you. And it's going to be a very challenging world, although much of it we've seen before. I decided I was interested in going into the law at age 12. I remember hearing that a man named Archibald Cox had been fired. And I asked my parents, well, what was he doing? What was his job? Investigating the president. Who fired him? The president. Something seemed wrong. And something that it took us a long time, with a new special prosecutor, Leon Jaworski, and a House and Senate Judiciary committees that were willing to do their job. It took us time, but the matter was set right. Many of the challenges that are before you today, we have seen before. Right here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, less than 100 years ago, 2 Italian immigrants, Mr. Sacco and Vanzetti, were tried for murder in a trial that was manifestly unfair. I have the trial transcript in my case book with Judge John Noonan, my professional responsibility case book, as the judge turned the other way as prejudicial questioning about ethnic background, about religion, and everything else was introduced into the trial. 2 men who suffered the death penalty as the president of Harvard University was cheering along for the prosecution. We've seen it before, the prejudice towards immigrants, and now we see it today. We have a president who, as a candidate for office, urged that we have a ban on Muslims emigrating into the United States, traveling to this country. Something that any student of the law who bothers to read just the First Amendment of the Constitution would know it is manifestly not only improper and immoral, but illegal in the United States of America. The skills you have in law school, however, are the skills that are going to allow you to go forth into the world we have today. And when the President of the United States has a so-called travel ban, you have the skills to look at the facts and the law and go into a federal court and say, no, the facts are clear. That is a Muslim ban. That is unconstitutional. You have the ability to stand up to power because of your understanding of facts and law. And they can recite facts however they want on Fox News and in other outlets of the media. Your commitment as lawyers trained at this great law school is to the real facts and the real law. And you will take those cases one by one, immigrant by immigrant, or with groups of plaintiffs into court, and you will prevail. We have fought that battle before, and you're going to fight it now for us moving forward. We have seen attacks, vicious attacks on the freedom of the press, not so much in this country in the 20th century, but we certainly saw in Germany in 1932, in the presidential election, and then in the parliamentary elections thereafter, vicious attacks on the so-called lying press. And we saw where that led. You have an understanding of not only the First Amendment right of freedom of the press, but the ability to understand how facts and law intersect. And so when you see powerful government officials use various strategies, supposedly neutral strategies, to silence the press, whether it be attacks on Amazon because of the connection with the Washington Post, whether it be attacks on NBC's license, or other attacks that we have seen in recent years on the freedom of the press, you have the understanding of how facts and law intersect to, when needed, go into court and defend the freedom of the press. Our Constitution depends on you. You understand, when you read the Constitution, what the founders intended when they talked about a well-regulated militia in the Second Amendment. We don't hear much talk about that part of the Second Amendment, do we? And that's not what's going on in this country right now. And that we need to be able to protect our children, to have a safe society, and that we can do so in conformity with the standards set forth in the Constitution and the right, yes, to bear arms in a well-regulated militia, which is not what we have. And you can accomplish change in the legislature, and you can explain to members of state legislatures throughout this country and to the United States Congress what the Second Amendment really means, because you've done your homework. You don't just simply learn about it from Fox News, with all due respect to Tucker Carlson. You understand corruption because you've seen it. Now, corruption we've had in our government for a long time. Campaign finance, terrible corruption, where public officials kowtow to the interests of political action committees and those who organize super PACs and dark money organizations. But many people either chose to ignore it, assume it wasn't there, or become so alienated from the political system that they checked out and did not participate in representative democracy. Did not vote, or voted for protest candidates who promised to drain the swamp and shake everything up. Well, now you have seen corruption in government, not only the normal corruption, which was never normal if you were to seek an ethical norm, but we have on top of the corruption which we had before, blatant corruption, in-your-face corruption on the part of the highest-ranking government officials. We have blatant violations of a provision of the Constitution which you may never have learned about in a constitutional law course a few years ago, the so-called Emoluments Clause. Yes, it's basically the no foreign government payoffs clause of the Constitution. You didn't hear about it because we didn't worry about the potential corruption of high-ranking United States government officials, not just by domestic campaign finance, but by foreign governments. But now we see it directly in our face from none other than the President of the United States. This is corruption that the founders understood. And that's why I put that clause in there, to protect our country from corruption from foreign governments through business dealings with United States government officials. What is the point of having the Tea Party here in Boston Harbor, throwing the tea in there in a revolution, and then you're going to have a president who's buying and selling tea with King George? Don't think so. So they figured that out, but we didn't pay much attention over the years. Well, now we have to, because it's serious. It's a serious threat to our country when foreign governments believe and actually can exercise a great deal of influence, not only over our elections, but our government officials through financial relationships. And I will not go on and on about the multitude of examples of violations of this critically important anti-corruption provision of the Constitution. But once again, successful litigation, including the case of the Attorney General of the state of Maryland and the District of Columbia, which I assisted with, that has gotten beyond summary judgment, that the motion to dismiss, that has survived the standing argument. Remember, standing is absolutely critical. I ran into some trouble with that in my emoluments case up in New York. But we only need one of them through for a judge to actually do what you are trained to do. Look at the facts and the law. What are the facts with respect to that hotel in Washington? The hotel that used to be government property that was leased to Donald Trump. What are the facts about the foreign government money coming into that establishment? And the room rates, which are several $100s more than the room rate at the other fancy hotels in town. What are the facts and what is the law? And we are going to have a judge explain to the President and to the Justice Department that the Emoluments Clause means what it says it means. Emolument is a profit or benefit, as set forth in Dr. Samuel Johnson's 1755 dictionary. Justice Scalia, the late Justice Scalia, I would think, would agree with the dictionary interpretation of the Constitution. Well, maybe not when it's not convenient, might have been the approach. Well, I would hope that the courts will look at the law and what the founders intended and look at the facts. That is just one of many, many examples that we confront today because of this administration. But corruption has been with us for a long time. As I said, just beneath the surface, ignored, tolerated for too long by members of the bar. And that is where you come in, because you went through this experience of watching what has happened to our government in the past 2 years. I believe you are going to have a lot higher standards than my generation did. We should have learned from President Nixon and what happened there. But one way or another, we didn't. We got distracted in the 1980s by making money and all the things that were going on, and people just assumed that that was an aberration. But your generation has watched what has happened to our democracy. And as lawyers, you are going to focus on what is really going on in our government. When you see members of the United States House and Senate have large holdings in energy companies and in defense companies and in drug companies, medical device companies, insurance companies, you're going to say, I understand that's a conflict. We cannot tolerate that. We need to change the ethics in public service, including in our state houses. And let's focus on the facts. Perhaps that is why the financial conflicts of interest in our campaign finance system, that is why we don't have a healthcare system that works, why we don't have the single-payer healthcare system that is used in just about every other industrialized country, why when you get a job, your healthcare is tied to your job, which makes you immobile. When you want to start a new law firm or a new business and you want to hire people to work for you, you have to worry about their health insurance because we have this irrational connection between your health insurance and your job. But this is a policy question. But why is the United States so different? Why don't we change? And then you look at what's going on in government and you see the PACs, the super PACs, of the drug companies, the medical device companies, the insurance companies, and you see the stock ownership of the members of Congress and of the Senate and the financial conflicts of interest in the state houses. It will be your job as lawyers to take your understanding of both facts and law into the broader world, to achieve social justice, to fix our healthcare system, to put into place a rational system that makes sense, similar to what the rest of the world, industrialized world, has had for a very long time, to address the student debt problem, one of the few countries that sends our younger generation out of colleges and graduate schools with enormous amounts of debt. Completely irrational. But once again, problems that will be solved when we address the basic corruption problem in our government, and we insist that our elected officials, whether in the Massachusetts, the Commonwealth, the State House here, or in Washington, adhere to the Constitution, adhere to the law. Congratulations, you are now lawyers. This is your job. And I hope you do a lot better job than those of us who tried. I guess I deserve Best Efforts Award for that White House job. I'll walk off with that. But it's your job, and I know you can do it. You're going to be great lawyers. Congratulations.